And just confirming you all can see my screen sharing this wiki on the preference and business unit optimization. Can I get some thumbs up on that? And I will be asking for some thumbs up throughout the session. So please familiarize yourself with that reaction. But I've also gone ahead and shared out the link to this wiki so that you all can follow along if you want. That said, I'm going to, in large part, be looking at an actual account. And so I really advise you do the same. Like the best way to learn this is to get into your account and look at the changes that have taken effect rather than thinking about it from a very abstract perspective. We know the emails, there's a lot in there, but for the most part, as we've done these sessions, people log into their account and they're like, oh, it's a little different. Oh, that makes sense. I can work through that. So we'd anticipate the same today, but of course, if there's any questions or hiccups, we're here to help you. And before I dive into what are going to be very specifics, we'll be looking at this user training section today. I do want to just take a minute to talk about why we are doing this preference and business unit optimization project. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. My eyes are not that good. So throughout the years, and eComm has been around for a very long time, since 2014 or 2015. And at that point in time, I think we had about 100 users, not even that. And so since then, we've had significant growth to 300 users. And a lot of that has been at the Anschutz campus. And so some of the ways that we configured our accounts back in the day when we had a smaller group of people isn't necessarily as scalable as we wanted it to be. We didn't anticipate this amount of growth. And so that's not only had implications to our team in managing this very large org, it also has implications for our constituent experience. And I should have added when it delays our work or us being able to turn around and deliver enhancements for you all, because we're just spinning our wheels doing things that could probably be done in a different way. This is one of those big projects. And so by optimizing this area, in a lot of ways simplifying, we're setting the stage for more progress in the future. So with those 300 users, we have a lot of diverse needs. We meet a lot of them today, but we could definitely do it a little better. So two things that we've thought about, if we did have a more optimal configuration, which we're doing now, we might be able to. So don't be married to these things. If we do these, we will let you know, but tentatively on the roadmap, what if there was a simpler version of the tool? It was easier to get emails out the door. I think that would meet a lot of people's needs. And so that could be a project we layer on later on. With that, I'll also argue there's some folks in the tool who want to do more robust things that we're limited in doing. So by way of kind of segmenting those two groups out, we might be able to fulfill more needs. So I will get off my soapbox now, my 3-minute little pitch about what the future might entail and why this project really could help us get there. But I'm sure, as you all are far more interested in, what does this mean for me today? And that's exactly what the session is. If you've been paying attention to those emails, lovely. If you haven't, no problem at all. Today's the day of change. So like I said, go ahead and log into your account, follow along today, and hopefully you'll pick up on these small changes pretty easily. I will also mention, as I alluded to earlier, you all are the 4th campus or group to move. So we've been doing this through June and July. Things have gone pretty well. I will add in the caveat, it's a lot. We're moving a lot of things and there's a lot of manual work. So I do not anticipate anything to be perfect. There will be things that we missed, and we know that. That's okay. Let us know. Your eComm specialist, you'll just submit tickets as you typically do of, hey, is this audience still there? Or is this in my account? Maybe we didn't move it. Maybe you're having a hard time finding it. But either way, well, we're here to support in that transition. So in the simplification, we've done a bit of condensing. And so some folks are sharing business units now. And so in your account, there is going to be a greater need for organization, which lovely folder structures across Marketing Cloud will help us achieve. And again, that's just organization now that we're sharing across accounts. But the other part of this with the simplification that I failed to mention earlier is cost savings. I know that's been at the forefront of every campus's mind, ours as well. And so by way of simplifying this, it's not only minimizing our resources, but actually technical pieces that we will have fewer business units, each of which we have to pay money for. So the first two pieces, we'll just go ahead and look in real quick, and I'll be in my account, is just the business unit name might be a little different than what you saw yesterday or previously. And then we're also going to go ahead and take a look in Content Builder. So we'll find a folder structure there as well as some of your previous assets. So let's go ahead and hop into, I'm already in tracking, getting ahead of myself, but I'm in the business unit. When I say that, this is CUA Central Administration. So some of you on the call are in this business unit, definitely not most of you, but yours should be appropriate for your work, if you will. So that might be a slight change, but once you're in your account, if you need to hover Email Studio and then click onto email to get into the Content Builder section or Email Studio, you can. Of course, it's going to be a little slow on me today. Okay, so once you're in Content Builder, Email Studio, one area that you'd like to go to in the top navigation is Content, which I think a lot of users spend a ton of time up here. So what you might see on this left-hand side that you did not previously, there is this overarching parent folder that everybody has just out of the box called Content Builder, and you can't change that, get rid of it, that exists there. But then underneath, you'll have these different folders that represent your unit. So what you might historically have been an entire business unit is now within one folder. So it should be fairly intuitive what your unit is. So feel free to poke on in there. And then we've also gone ahead and moved assets from July 1 of 2022. So anything that you've created in there or updated since then has been migrated. So it should live under your account. But if you're sitting there thinking like, oh, I had some content from 18 months ago that I know I'm going to want, no problem. It's still there for a little bit. Go ahead and let your eComm specialist know, and they'll be able to move that additional content for you. So assets should be available in your folders if you've historically been in your account. But moving forward, we will just want you to be mindful of uploading content to your folder. We're not going to want everybody adding all of their content to just this parent content builder folder. It's going to get unyieldy. That said, you are also welcome. Some folks already have folder structures underneath their folders. That would have been migrated as well, but you are very highly encouraged to do whatever you want underneath that initial folder for your unit. We do have linked in this wiki how to move items. I'm going to go through this quickly, but I want to call it out because this will come up again. So if you do accidentally move assets to the Content Builder folder, you are able to move them retroactively by, you could check these boxes. You get a nice little actions item up here and you can move and get them in the folder that you want. If you do find other folks creating clutter in this top folder or accidentally putting things in your folder, feel free to reach out to your specialist and we'll correct that behavior with them. So appreciate your grace and patience with everyone during this transition. So you will have an opportunity to asset old content for some time, but I do say like get those requests to your eComm specialist sooner rather than later. Start looking in your account if there's anything that's missing. Please note that content was migrated in the last couple of days, so there was a bit of a freeze period. So if you had uploaded things to your account in the last couple of days, that's perfectly fine. However, it might not have moved. There's a chance it got captured. It probably didn't. So either go ahead and re-upload those assets to your new account, assuming they're still like in your downloaded folder or whatever. But if it is a big email that you created, just ask your eComm specialist to move that to your new unit. So that would have just been moved if you created it on the 31st, the 1st or 2nd of August. Historically, I don't think your campus does a lot of this. So I'll touch on it lightly. There are 2 methods of sending emails. I believe most of you guys do a guided send versus a Salesforce send email, but I will call this out. When I say a guided send, what I believe most of you do is send an email, and it has a nice wizard to walk you through these 4 steps. If you send in this way, that's perfectly fine. You can disregard what I'm about to say. But if you leverage under interactions, Salesforce send emails, it gets an email out the door the exact same way. It's just a different interface. If you do a lot of these, we will want to set up the same folder structure underneath these Salesforce send emails for the same sort of organization. Those folders do not exist currently. So if you know you do Salesforce send emails, reach out to your eComm specialist so we can get a folder added for you. But that is definitely one gap, but we're assuming most people do not do these Salesforce send emails. Yes, so your eComm specialist, and I should have called her out on the line. I believe you're on here. So Kelly Miller is the primary eComm specialist in the Marketing Cloud and Salesforce space. But I believe all those tickets should be going through the same help form as they normally do, and it will be directed correctly. But we also have Kelly Carroll on the line. I know more focuses in the CVent space, but there's definitely some crossover. How could I forget our most important people? All right, so moving on to send classification, sender profiles, delivery profiles. Same sort of thought here. We've probably aggregated more into one unit than what previously existed. So how do we keep organization here? So there is not organization, and to show you this, I'm going to go to do a test send actually of an email. So in the send classification area, we do not have a folder structure, but we obviously want to keep these things organized. So each unit has an abbreviation or kind of an acronym that we've used historically with you all, and we will continue to use. So for the events group, these are their 2 previous send classifications. And we did go ahead and move all of those that existed. It wasn't just ones you've used recently. So you should find all of your previous items there. The only difference is they have a little abbreviation on the front end. But again, if we missed any, let us know. We'll get it added to your account. So tracking information. This is a component that we are not able to, from the Marketing Cloud side, I know this scares people, we are not able to transfer this information. So depending on what occurred with your change, some of you are staying in the same business unit you had and people are joining you. A lot of you have moved to other business units. And in those cases where you've moved, like we couldn't move that tracking data. So what you might find in your account now, if you go to tracking and sends, we have that same very similar folder structure on the left-hand side here. So we'll want you, and I'll show you in a second, to start sending your tracking information to your particular folder. So if you ever find yourself popping into my tracking and you're like, my son's not here, I swear I sent it last week, what's going on? You might need to go ahead and expand those folders underneath it to look into your particular folder. So there are some groups that have migrated where you are not going to see tracking data in here. That's what I'm saying is did not get migrated, but there are some of you who have stayed in your own business unit. So we didn't just delete that data. That said, particularly for these individuals who are like, oh no, I wanted that data, and how am I going to make sure my next newsletter is performing as well as the ones I've been sending for the last 2 years? We can achieve that, and I will do a follow-up session on this as well, but I will show you briefly. We do have these business unit dashboards to see how your campus's emails are performing and when they're performing. So this data from the Salesforce perspective has not gone away. So we will be able to manipulate this dashboard. And again, this will come at a future session. We'll just need to do a little finagling with it in order to get data essentially from your previous sends to be able to be compared to your future ones. But my point here being, as I'm looking at Anschutz email send data, this all goes back to 2020. And when eventually, when we get rid of business units or delete them at the end of the month, it might go away in Marketing Cloud. We can't log in there. The data that's been sent on over to Salesforce, it exists. It goes back to 2020. So this is, from the data perspective, our saving grace, and really, I think, a great method of adoption around Salesforce reporting and dashboards. I know a lot of people don't leverage this, but they do look at tracking, and I see Salesforce dashboards as being far more efficient and actionable. So it should be, again, even more efficient. But so for some of you, we do have, like, even though you've migrated and that data is not there, and I've just mentioned, okay, we still have it in Salesforce. If you're still thinking, no, I'd really like to just look at it in Marketing Cloud, your eComm specialist does still have access to your old business unit up until the end of this month. So again, with those requests, you need to ask them for something, do that sooner rather than later. And I say that as being the end of the month. I want you all to think of that, because I realize I'm scrolling down. There are some units, many units, if you will, at the Anschutz campus where these business units are being deleted. So after this August 31st, like, we can't recover it. It's gone. And again, this is our cost savings, which is awesome. This is a lot of cost savings we're seeing. So kudos there. But if you historically were in a unit where it's being deleted, you need to be a lot more mindful of making sure we get this stuff by the end of the month. If you are not in one of these units, you probably have a bit of a larger window. We do reference even out to the end of this year that you could ask your eComm specialist. So be mindful of those dates. If you have any questions on what dates particularly pertain to you, talk to your eComm specialist. So going back to tracking, and Malia, thank you, keeping me on track. So when you are doing a send, we'll go back to this and do a quick send. Of course, you want to select your send classification. I'm not going to actually send this. Nobody get too worried. We have a folder structure in data extensions as well, which I will review in a moment. But it's not until the third or configure delivery window, and I think most people just focus on the send timing to send immediately or schedule in the future. But over on this right-hand side under tracking, by default, it's set to my tracking, and you're able to change it here upon send. But similarly to in content, I know people are going to overlook this. Don't be too hard on yourself if, when it happens, when you're over in tracking and sends, it would by default go into the My Tracking folder. You could always go ahead and move them after the fact. All right. So part of this optimization and simplification came with email preferences. And so that will impact the audiences that are available to you as well. So one, familiarize yourself with your new email preferences. So, we've been sending you those emails, letting you know what your old preferences were, what your new ones were. And in some cases, people have fewer preferences and some they have more. It really depends. So again, if you have any questions about your particular case, do not hesitate to ask. We want that clarity. Based on questions we received after yesterday's session, thank you for sending those along. I did want to update this portion of the recording slightly, just to call out a very common scenario at Anschutz that we saw, where you historically had two preferences, like your unit's communication preference and your unit's events preference. And before we even launched this for any of the campuses, we did a lot of analysis of the data. Were constituents really opting out on that granular of a level? And what we were finding was that wasn't really the case. It was like, in majority of cases, less than 1% discrepancy, and in most, it was like 0.04, 0.05. So that handful of individuals who are taking advantage of those different preferences, it just, the duplicative work, it's like double. It just doesn't make sense if the majority aren't leveraging it. So not only good on our end, but it's also helped clean up the constituent interface as well, which is something that is very large, right? It's not just your campus, it's all of the campuses. So hopefully that simplified interface will just provide a better constituent experience. But if you're thinking, where are my event preferences? I know I've used those since April 1st. That's why they're not there. Those categories have been combined. So you will be sending your event communications out under the same category as your communications moving forward. So under a single preference, and I believe most of those are categorized now with like comms, communications at the end. So you'll see that sub comms at the end of your data extensions. And so that cleared a couple things up for y'all, but of course, if you still have questions, Kelly can provide clarity. One way that you can start familiarizing yourself is looking at the data extensions that are available to you in your account. And so this might be a newer area, or sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Under interactions and import, so you all should be very familiar with this. This is that so important, crucial step that you all must be taking before you send your communications, that these audiences don't just update automatically. You need to go ahead and check this box and hit start before you do every single send, or your audience is inaccurate and you're definitely violating canned spam. So we make sure we start those every single time. So what you might see in your account could be different from historical, is other like acronyms at the beginning. Again, those same abbreviations, trying to create organization between the different units and their different data extensions that are available. So we've tried to do that naming convention within this window, but you also saw, that naming convention to try to keep organization, because there is no folder structure within this window, which is annoying. So you very well might need to be going on over to other pages. But what we did see earlier when I was in my sending window, go back to my email, I'll go and hit send. On the selecting audience portion, that you can see these different folders. So you will be able to find which data extensions have been created in your account, that these are ready and available for you. And so we did go ahead and move recent data extensions, and based on today, us moving you, we viewed recent data extensions as those used since April 1st of 2023. So again, if you have a list that you're like, oh, I used it in March, it's not going to be there. Great to get ahead of it and let your eComm specialist know now, hey, I'm going to need that list. Would you mind unarchiving it for me? So again, it's not gone, and it's just not readily available for you. So your eComm specialist will tweak it a little bit and get it ready for you. So we are not able within that window, and this is a big bummer. I wish it presented itself the same way. When you're sending, you do see these different folder structures, but under interactions and import, there is no folder structure to set up. So we cannot organize it in the same way. I hesitated on showing this, but it could be useful to you, Zach, based on what you're asking. Under subscribers, there are Salesforce data extensions, which is a reflection of what's in import. And there you do see that folder structure. So if you're just trying to look at what's in your folder, that could be a valuable place to do it. You generally don't need to be in this window, which is why I typically don't show folks it. I'd much rather you focus on the interactions and import and make sure you're restarting those data extensions. So I know we focused on the data extensions, but behind that is a report that is driving every single data extension. So we've done a similar kind of archival process, just made the ones that you've been using recently since April 1st available, and any before that. Again, you'll need to ask your eComm specialist to unarchive. I know I called out those deleted business units, but once again, if you are one of those folks, just be far more mindful of our timelines with those business units getting deleted at the end of the month. But we can absolutely recover things up until then. Kelly, do you have anything to add, particularly regarding how to request help?
No, thank you for leading this, Mel, and feel free to reach out to me. You can directly email me, or the preference would be to send to the eComm inbox.
Is that eComm at cuanschutz.edu?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, sounds good. I will have to drop the line at 11:30, but if we do have any quick questions, I will stay on for 2 more minutes. And otherwise, send those questions off to Kelly, as she said, to that inbox, eComm at cuanschutz.edu, which I shared in chat as well. And otherwise, thank you so much, Kelly. She has been so heads down doing so much work for y'all. So thank you so much. And you've really rocked it. So thank you on behalf of everyone, and appreciate everyone joining today's session. Have a great day, all.